All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
We have Wheel of Time, Gathering Storm, chapter 34, that you said 4 chapters through 38.
Yeah.
And I feel fantastic.
Well, hold on. Stand up so we can see the whole of that shirt, because
Getting older is just one body part after another saying, haha, you think that was bad? Watch this.
oh,
No, I finally got a doctor's appointment with a new doctor to talk about my sitting issue for those that have been following. And this general practitioner spent more time with me on that issue than the person who did the surgery, including surgery time. So I think I have a new PCP, and I like this, and we'll see how it comes out. But he put me on a different antibiotic than the other 3 rounds we did, and I feel fantastic. In fact, I feel like I'm outside of my body right now. I don't know what it is about this thing. I might be about to die. I don't know, but because slow irregular heartbeat is one of the side effects possibly, but I feel like every bit of me is like an inch outside of my body. So it's an interesting feeling, but my butt doesn't hurt.
yeah. I had never known what people meant when they talked about a disassociative feeling, and then I started this new regimen I'm on of Special K, and oh, that's what it is, and it is a you know I still don't understand the people who obsess over it. Like, one of the last times Rogan had Graham Norton on, I was like, please stop talking about magic mushrooms and talk about the cool, Stone Age stuff. And they just wouldn't stop talking about ayahuasca and magic mushrooms. I'm like, okay, okay, I get it. You like this stuff. Come on, let's move on. Um, Anywho, speaking of out of mind, out of body experiences, uh, we've got some Rand, but before we get there, we have to get through a Matt chapter.
Oh, I forgot we got the imitation, Matt. I have the wrong hat. We'll just put
You,
it
you
sideways.
do.
Yeah.
In fact, my my note for chapter 34 is simply so cringe. And I couldn't stop thinking about um what where I thought you nailed it, which is he's turned Matt into Johnny Depp's Captain Jack Sparrow. But
Yeah,
it's
that's
it
that's what I brought up the first episode.
but it's
Yeah.
worse than that. The more I read, the more it's worse because it's like, the he was a fun, great character in the first movie, and some of the sequels were okay, but part of the problem with it is they thought, oh, hey, people liked that. Let's do more of that rather than
Hmm.
just keep doing that, but have an interesting story. No, 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 no. He needs to be even more Jack Sparrow-y. And that's what this chapter was to me, was this one goes up to 11.
Mm.
Oh. And it wasn't just, our first rant with the first Matt chapter was just Matt himself, how what was just off, and even Talmanes was off,
Hmm.
and and
Yeah,
and
a warder, is it? I'll have to practice scowling. That's not Ptolemy's.
it's and it's everybody in this chapter. So it is everything around Matt is now warping. Which is kind of funny because the next Matt chapter is Varen talking about the pattern warping itself around to pull her to Matt. And it made me laugh, but not with it at it, because I was thinking about this chapter going, oh, kind of like how reality is warping around Matt while Sanderson is trying to figure out how to write him.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, yeah, the ridiculousness of this and the not Mattness. This is a situation where the real Matt for 10 books would have just winged it.
Mm-hmm.
He would have found himself in this predicament and kind of just made the best of it. Now, no, now we've got a Matt that spends all night planning this thing.
You know what I thought of when he was going through this, and this is not a good comparison, because as much as I love this movie, it is objectively a terrible movie. Con Air.
Oh, that's a great movie.
Yeah, it is a great terrible movie, but the scene where the bad guys are planning their ambush of the feds. The feds are coming to them and this is how we're going to ambush them, and then the dumb convicts are, well, what's that? That's a Coke can, and he flips it out of the way. That's what I thought of, and I was like, the terrible writers and directors of that awesomely terrible movie were better at doing this scene than the guy who's, this award-winning author who writes ludicrous amounts of work, has this huge volume of work. And yet that's basically what this whole chapter is. It's that scene, but that scene was much tighter, much better, and it had just the right amount of beats of comedy while letting John Malkovich still be the imposing, impressive antagonist he was supposed to be.
Yeah, well, it's part of it is the 10 books before. Had that been Matt from the beginning and that been the tone of the books
Mm-hmm.
around him from the beginning, it might have been okay. We, as the reader, you'd have been like, okay, cool.
But then I doubt he would have been as impactful and as big of a fans still would have loved him, but I doubt he would have been as big a fan favorite as he was because it's the subtlety, it's the nuance that really pulls you into Matt.
Well, it's the relatableness
Mm-hmm.
because what we can't relate to as people are is this silly scheming with the Coke can, like you said. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the what we can't relate to that because that's just a silly part of a silly movie.
Mm-hmm.
What we could relate to is, yep, I'm in that situation again. What do I do about it?
And it's not just that, but then we get an immediate contrast with him because he he actually manages to write Matt better when he's not writing Matt. That's one
Oh,
of my
when
notes on
he's
the next chapter,
yeah.
is when he's referring to Matt from the perspective of other people. Because in the meeting, the next chapter is Rand and Tawan, and Matt comes up, and
Oh,
both
sorry.
Tawan's thoughts about Matt and then what Rand and Nynaeve say about Matt, they're concise and they're right. One of the comments Rand makes is, that he'll always do the right thing no matter how much he grumbles about what his conscience makes him do. Is one of the lines of Rand in the next chapter. I thought, oh, that's great. How can you get that, but then not actually get Matt? And then, do you have any more thoughts on this chapter before we just move on to chapter 35? Because
No,
I don't
we'd
want
be
to
beating dead
flagellate
horses.
this to
Yeah,
see Stequine. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So one of my thoughts, one of my notes for the next chapter, just kind of before we get into the specifics of what's going on here in chapter 35, is it reminded me of Matt and Min in the first few episodes of season 2 of the um, so-called Wheel of Time adaptation on Amazon Prime. And we talked about this. We complimented when it was good, and there were parts there that were really good. There were times where you could say, "Oh yeah, that's Matt, that's Min." As someone who has read these books way too many times and is intimately familiar with these characters like they're our own friends, and you go, "Ah, yeah, there you are. There's that friend I haven't seen in a while." And it just kind of clicks back in, and all of a sudden, you're buddies and you're slapping backs, but then they say something
Not to
stupid.
get us too off the book, but I have a big problem with the men in the show. Men, M-I-N, not the men in the show.
That's a
The
whole separate problem
yeah,
that
no, because this is my same problem with the. Should I use the word that would get us canceled? Bulldyke. Because there's a difference between a tomboy
mm-hmm,
and a girl trying to pretend she's a boy.
mm-hmm,
And the men in the show is trying to pretend she's a boy. Whereas a real tomboy, I mean, it's just the mannerisms are different. It's basically a born female, has some feminine qualities that likes dude things. That's a tomboy. The girl that likes to get in the mud and go noodling for catfish and fix cars or whatever.
mm-hmm.
That's different. than the girl that says, "Oh, I'm a lesbian, so I must act like a boy." They get it wrong. In fact, I might have a meme for this. It was basically a trans woman is is a dude mansplaining to a woman how a woman should be.
You are not wrong.
Yeah,
That
it's but that's the men in the show. Yeah, there were some good moments with it when she was talking with Matt through the wall, and those were okay.
exactly.
But she wasn't convincing to me because Min is a tomboy.
Hmm.
Min is not a girl trying to act like she's a boy.
Exactly, and that's why the second half to my note on this reminding me of Matt and Min in season two is they only get the surface level. They only understood the character and the characterization on a surface level. They either didn't have the intellect or the intellectual curiosity, or didn't bother to really dive into the source material to actually get the full character, fully understand who this person is. You're only understanding how this person acts. There's a
Mhm.
big difference between how you act and who you are, and
Which I,
we
I think part
understand
of
who
that
Matt
was the where
is.
they met her too.
Hmm.
We don't get the dynamic with her with the innkeeper that was her aunt or whatever in the books, right?
Hmm.
We don't get that dynamic that she was the oddball in that group. We get
Yeah.
her as the innkeeper,
Hmm.
and
It's a good point.
there's nothing to contrast to. There's just her as a person. Oh my God, I can see things, and Moiraine knew it. That's it.
No, that's a great point, and it's why it is kind of a meta point over these next couple of chapters with you know Rand getting darker and darker. Is the it stands out because of the contrast, because a lot of these Rand chapters are actually Min chapters. It's Rand doing stuff, but it's Min's point of view, and that's what makes it so impactful. Is seeing through her eyes and feeling what she's feeling as this man she loves is descending into darkness. If you didn't have that contrast, and if you didn't have freaking setup and payoff, setup and payoff, setup and payoff, we've had a dozen books of setup now. So now the payoff punches you in the gut. Even when it's not as polished as it would have been if Jordan wrote it, Sanderson is still able to punch you in the gut with some of this stuff
Hmm.
because he is, as much as we gripe, he is himself an accomplished author. He is good at this craft. And Jordan set things up so masterfully that he's able to deliver the shot.
No, Sanderson's big problem is he doesn't understand the inner workings of the mind. So when he's trying to deal with these complex issues of craziness or ADHD in
Hmm.
the account of Matt or over conscientiousness in Perrin, he doesn't get that. But
Hmm.
just simple interactions like the crossover from his point of view to Tuan's point of view, where they have the same thought, like, oh, she's just a child. And then she looks back, he's just a young man. I heard things, but I didn't really believe it. That's a good interaction there, and that was a good little segue from one
Hmm.
person to the other, having the exact same thought about each other. That he does well.
What he is he is the kind of guy who would write really solid screenplays for really fun, good action movies that you walk out of the theater and you kind of forget about it, but you had a good time while you were watching the movie. That's how I feel because he's a plot guy, and I hadn't really thought of it in these terms before. But the I've read, I believe, four of his books, and three of them were a trilogy, or what I thought was a trilogy, but apparently that story kept going. But anyway, I can't really remember the characters. I can pretty much remember the basic plot of those three books and some of the mechanics of the world. I don't remember the characters very well at all. I just kind of remember, okay, there was this girl and there was this guy and that some stuff happened.
Mm-hmm.
And versus someone like John McTiernan, who could do both. Okay, he could give you the popcorn action movie, but then he could give you one of my favorite movies, which is, it's one of those, if you're flipping through the channels back when we had channels to flip through, and I came across Hunt for Red October, no matter what scene it was on, I would stop and I would watch. Because not only is there some action in there, but it's character driven. And so McTiernan was able to do both, as he was able to construct this suspense and this action, but then invest you in these characters, in Alec Baldwin and Sean Connery's characters in particular. Of you want to know not what is going to happen next, but what this character is going to do next. All right, enough rambling with
Well,
the.
it makes you wonder about the selection process for the author and who actually had the say in that. I'm assuming it was Harriet, but
No, Jordan specified, um before he died, I want Brandon Sanderson to.
hmm.
I want you to reach out to him and ask him if he'll finish the series. I don't believe he was told until after Jordan died, because I recall reading him about him getting the call and about him meeting with Harriet. I don't think he ever met with Jordan.
So he was obviously a fan of his. Uh,
Yeah, he knew his work and he liked his writing style, and he liked that his style was similar to his own, so that he thought that that would make for a
he
smoother
just didn't have
transition.
he just didn't have the thought that this part that he doesn't do well is the thing that people love me for.
Hmm.
He, you know, he could have that cognitive dissonance a little bit to this. He might have thought I'm just telling a great story
Hmm.
when realistically he's super famous because he managed to add Jordan managed to add depth to the stupidest things. And that's why his series is epic. Where
Yeah.
Sanderson has very little depth, but he does flow the story okay.
Well, so page 537, we're at the beginning of chapter 35 here, where Rand is going to meet with Tuan. And there's a great line here down at the bottom, as Rand is thinking about, um what needs to happen today and how he absolutely cannot leave without making peace with these people. But then he has this thought: that peace would be the calm before the storm. He wouldn't be protecting his people from war, just preserving them so that they could die for him elsewhere. But he would do what had to be done. That resonates because that's not Rand. Rand was the hero because he was a good man.
No, but I like this part
No,
because
exactly.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
why it resonates, because that's not Rand. It's who he is now. It's who he's
This
becoming.
is where Sanderson is getting it right because remember the
Mhm.
last time we had to talk about Rand, he kept talking about anger and rage. Though this is pure Machiavellian politics. I am just preserving these people to die for me somewhere else.
Mhm.
This is Stalin right here. Yeah, 200,000 people are going to die, but we got 400,000. That's the
Mhm.
mindset he's in right
Mhm.
now.
And and I think there's, so a couple pages later, there's this. I'm hoping this is as deep as I want it to be, because there's this interesting exchange between, um Rand and Nynaeve about the Heron marked sword,
Hmm.
and how, and Nynaeve says, because Rand starts talking about the last time he was here and he killed a blade master, the first time he killed another human being. And Nynaeve makes the point that, oh, so you need a Heron marked sword. You deserve to carry it. And Rand makes the point, um, Rand shook his head. There were no witnesses. Matt and Heron were fighting elsewhere. They saw me right after the fight, but did not witness the killing blow. What do witnesses matter? She scoffed. You defeated a blade master, so you are one. Whether or not it was seen by others is immaterial. He looked at her. Why carry the Heron mark if not to be seen by others, Nynaeve? the first thing to pop into my head was the adage that morality is who you are when no one is watching.
Shopping carts.
Shopping carts.
I about blew a gasket yesterday when I was at the store because someone put the shopping cart next to the return bin, not in the return bin, next to the return bin.
The only time that is acceptable is if the return bin is
Bin is
full
full.
and you don't
Yes.
want it spilling out and blocking the way. So better beside than in the middle of the roadway.
Yeah. No, I'm like,
Yeah.
so this person probably parked next to it and then didn't put their shopping cart in it. How lazy are you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shopping
Yeah.
carts are a window into people's souls. What are you going to do when it doesn't matter?
And I feel like that this seemingly pointless bit of banter, I think is actually a little deeper. That one, again, this isn't Rand. Rand didn't used to care about these kinds of
The
things.
formalities of
Yeah.
appearance.
I mean, he cared what people thought, but for the right reasons. Of I need people to understand that I'm the good guy here. I need to win hearts and minds, as the modern saying goes. That's what he cared about, not the superficial pageantry of it all. And actually, you get that here in a second when it switches to Tawan's point of view, that this is why she's the quote unquote good Sanshin, because the um the formalities of the Sanshin, I think to the blood, it's about their station. It's about I'm the important one. But you see from Tuwan's point of view that no, there's these seemingly unimportant um rituals and traditions, they matter because it's what help maintains proper order. And that's what she cares about, is maintaining proper order. Um, and that's what Rand used to care about, not in those terms, but you know, uh, I, I need people to understand I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to bring everyone together to fight the real bad guy, the shadow, and I need to win hearts and minds because of that. And now suddenly it's, well, the heron is for other people to see.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that kind of wraps up here right before the end of his point of view section. Um, there's this. So when he seizes the one power before he goes into the meeting, he has the sickness, the dizziness, and in that moment, he's fighting Lews Therin for control. And so in that moment, there's this blurring of the two, and he's not quite sure who he is. And so I
The
I
blurring of him and Lews Therin, or the blurring of him and Moradin.
I think that's the other wrinkle here that he doesn't
Is
get.
he's not being able to differentiate that someone else is in his mind as well.
Yeah, and I wonder if that connection to Morden is
Hold on. I think
part of
Sanderson didn't pull it off, but I got a thought, but it's a spoiler.
what led to the temptation and the acting on the temptation to take the true power, to wield the true power. When the Dark One dangled it in front of him. And I hadn't thought about that before, about how strong is that connection. I mean, it's strong enough that Morden got royally
Oh,
pissed at Simirhaj for blowing off Rand's
okay.
hand.
So,
And
so I apologize because we might have a long episode today. If my thoughts are, it could be quick or could be long.
mm,
I don't know.
but
That's what I tell all the ladies. I don't know.
but that's, but no, you make a good point about the Morden part of it, because he's thinking about, Lews Therin and that blurring and the forgetting who he is. and he's um there's this moment that this kind of again kind of hits you in the gut because of Jordan's setup of it all. But the previous day, he had woken at midday, huddled in the corner of his rooms, crying and whispering to himself about Ilyena. He could feel the soft texture of her golden hair in his hands and could remember holding her close. He could remember seeing her dead at his feet, slain by the one power. But then here's the money shot. Giggity. Oh no, not bad. Who was he? Did it really matter? Yes. Yes, it does. And I hadn't thought of it in the context until you brought up Morden, but that may be the nihilism of Elon the philosopher bleeding through that connection.
Should I have put up Nietzsche?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Because yeah, that's and there's going to be some more of that here when we go back to Rand when he goes to literally nuke Grendel. But first we move to Tawan. Any other thoughts before we move to Tawan's point of
No,
view?
no, no. My thoughts are in the spoilers, and I'm excited for it. So let's
Okay.
move. Yeah.
Um.
I did put assholeology up though because we have Matt, and that's the Matt from 10 for the first 10 books. He was an asshole, but he was our asshole,
mm,
and that was the perfect Matt. Now he's just a I would use the word tool. He's a tool, as the slang would go in the
mhm.
90s. Hey, sorry,
Um.
somebody's walking their dog in front of my house, and
So I like right away what we start with Tawan watching Rand, observing, and then I like that we get her thought process, and then it shows what she thinks about and how she thinks and why she thinks the way she thinks. Um, just from his walk, which this is a thing. You have talked about this before about gait analysis, that you can tell a lot about someone's physicality by the way they walk.
yeah, what is it? Cat crosses the courtyard or something
Yeah,
that they talk about
yeah.
in book two. Well, I think I said it when we came across that in book two. I'm like, that's how I teach people how to walk, anyways, because it's good for your body. And
But
yeah, go ahead.
and the Tawan is making the physical and mental connection there as well, as it's not just it's also about imposing your will, about what's the dress for the job you want, not the job you have, that kind of thing. And so Tawan had been trained to walk that way, to give no quarter in the way she stepped. Who had trained him, she wondered. Likely he had the finest of teachers to prepare him in the ways of kings and leaders. Yet reports said he had grown up as a farmer in a rural village, a story carefully spread to bring him credibility with the common people, perhaps.
In defense of her mind, Lan was his teacher on the way he walked.
Mm-hmm.
So he did have the finest of teachers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she doesn't realize she's right, but she doesn't realize why she's right. She's right for both. That both, and she.
One of the only good scenes in the show, we give credit when it's due, was they kind of did it aftermarket, but Lan teaching Rand how to walk in.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good moment because not only was it nostalgia from the books, it was a moment that was actually true to their characters. It,
Mm-hmm.
albeit too late, but at the same time, it was still something that worked in that show.
Mm-hmm. Um, there's also a great example of setup and payoff just right here in this half chapter, because right here at the beginning, she's thinking people were wondering why was she still in mourning? Why was she still dressed in black with the ashes on her face and still the daughter of the nine moons instead of having to declare herself empress? And again, much like we talked about with the previous Tawan chapters when she was dealing with Beslin, because she's thinking several steps ahead of everyone else, and because she is she is thinking about more than just imperial politics. When she thinks about the empire, she has a global vision, which seems strange for an empire that spans a continent, but she's thinking even bigger than what these people are thinking of. And it's because of this man is what she thinks is the Empress could not meet anyone, even the Dragon Reborn, on an equal footing, but the Daughter of the Nine Moons could. And I love that. And then it's going to end the very end is I am the Empress. Is so the setup here is I have to be the Daughter of the Nine Moons so I can meet him on equal footing, and then after that meeting, partly because of the way it goes down, I am the Empress. She declares herself. Um,
One point I want to bring up, page 450, 542, excuse me. Uh, she's reminiscing on she knows the Asha Aman or who they are. Uh, she talks about having tried to train some. Remember we went on that these things weren't Shanshan, the cuffs and
mhm, mhm.
the collars. I think Sanderson just got that wrong
Hmm.
because this implies that they do have collars for men.
Well, yeah, it's vague. It's not clear how the people who have tried to train male channelers did they do it the way Rand is doing it? Did they try and make their own Black Tower, or do they have collars?
She speaks
It's
of it in this paragraph just like she would as a Soldam.
yeah. Yeah.
And did they put the regular Adam on there and it didn't work well, or did they have the male?
Oh,
No,
no,
we
no,
wouldn't
no.
even specify that there's a male Adam if it even worked, if the regular one
It
didn't work
doesn't.
on 50.
It
Yeah.
doesn't. No, we know it does because of way back. I don't remember where it was. Someone has the thought that one of the cruel games that I don't know if it was this empress or other empresses or empresses would play is if they wanted to mess with you in a cruel way, they would put a collar on a man because sometimes nothing would happen, but sometimes they would die shrieking in agony. And the implication was, oh, that's someone who can channel, whether they have the spark, probably they have the spark,
Hmm.
because if you can learn, I doubt anything would happen. But the implication was that if you put it on a man who could channel, it would kill him, or at least cause him severe and excruciating pain.
Yeah, but so we still get that implicate with that implied that
Mhm.
still contradicts her trying to
Yeah,
train them.
it does seem like a bit of a plot hole. Another interesting quasi plot hole here that I made a note on is what she calls the Essenic cycle, or the what is it, the Carathon cycle, I think, on this side of the world,
Hmm.
the prophecies of the dragon. Now, previously, we had seen where her or someone thinking about that they have a like an impure, a bastardized form of the prophecies here, and that was that there was some kind of prophecies on the other side of the world, but they were wrong until whoever, whether it was Luther Pandrag himself or someone, um, established them in their pure form, their true form. And there was always an implication there, and the thought amongst us nerds on the forums that Ishamael had had a hand in warping the prophecies of the Sanshin to lead them to the return.
Hmm.
Because she says as much, she justifies the return as the omens told us. Basically, the last battle is coming, and the prophecies tell us the Sanshin need to unite the world and lead the last battle. And in one of his moments where he's kind of bragging, Ishamael hints that he was the one who sent Luther Pandrag across the ocean. That he was whispering in Arthur's ear, Arthur Hawkwing's ear, and he was the one who convinced him to lay siege to Tar Valon and send a big chunk of his army and his son across the waves. Um, but it would appear that there are elements that are actually true.
That time it's Heath's
Yeah,
dog.
yeah, that's me. I got guys here replacing the windows, and someone got a little too close to the master bedroom door, and he doesn't like it. Um, because here on the top of page 544, the SNX cycle said that he would stand on his own grave and weep. He's
Wait,
gonna do
what page
that.
again?
544.
Okay. Oh, I see it now. Okay.
Yeah. And she's wondering what does that mean, and it's actually going to be fairly literal and happen at the end of the book, but she's wondering is it does it have to do with the dead walking because that's going on, and she mentions that that it's unclear, and there was something else that had popped up that maybe I'll remember that where I got it seemed like a warping of the prophecies, and yet it kind of comes true. um it makes me wonder if Ishamael whoever um edited the prophecies for the Sanshin did have some degree of foretelling and is
Well,
accidentally adding to the
so
prophecies.
so remember, we haven't talked about this in a long time. We're dealing in a world of fate.
Hmm.
Ishi's editing of the prophecy may be part of the prophecy
Hmm.
because he is a thread in the pattern, just like
Oh yeah,
Rand is.
yeah. We're gonna get to that big time in chapter 36 with Varen and Matt and Tavarinness and whatnot. I thought we might go down a bit of a rabbit hole there. Um, all right, so let's get ourselves canceled again, along with Sanderson. On page 546, I found this very interesting and thought you might have thoughts about this. She's thinking about Matt um, after she brings him up, and she is once again shocked that, huh, here's another thing that I thought was nonsense, either a straight up lie or just him being braggadocious, but oh no, he really did grow up with the Dragon Reborn. Um, so this is page 546, about halfway down. And she's thinking, oh, he did know the dragon. That makes him more valuable to me. So she's thinking about his utility.
Mhm.
But then she has this thought of,
Well, right before that, Rand says, "I trust Matt had his reasons. He always does, and they seem so logical to him at the time." You're right. He does write Matt better through other people's eyes
uh-huh,
because that is exactly
uh-huh.
how I feel.
Yeah,
I did what I did, and it was the right. I should have put thinking in bets up
it
because,
seemed like a good
yeah,
idea at the time.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
I made the best decision that person could have made as that person at that time.
so I love this little insert of this very human moment for Tuan as she's thinking about the utility of Matt and the because of his connection to the Dragon Reborn. He needed to be raised to the high blood, shave his head, and learn the proper way of living. That all seemed a shame to her for reasons she could not explain to herself. Because you're the Empress, but you're also a woman, a young woman, and he's a handsome young man who curled your toes with his kiss, even though you don't want to admit it. Uh, and we're gonna actually get a sharp contrast to that in 37
Well, I mean,
when
we get it again. I mean, there's a little bit of not naive here, even though.
Mhm,
Okay, so this does parallel a little bit. I said a little bit not naive. It doesn't sound like the word she would say, but it is something she would do.
mhm.
Just like Matt bowing before Egwene several books ago,
Yes,
because she's
yes.
one of her people. So I think it was clumsily done, even though it was correct in
Hmm.
its nature.
Hmm.
Uh, but again, talking about Matt outside of in his head, Sanderson did it right. He's a good man. Matt may seem a little rough at times, but he is a solid friend as one could hope for, though he does grumble about what his conscience makes him do. That's the Matt we know. That's not the Matt he's writing, which makes you wonder if Sanderson just didn't know how to do it, or if this is actually Jordan notes verbatim versus Sanderson writing.
That was one of my thoughts too,
Yeah.
is how much was this chapter influenced by stuff
I
Jordan had
would
left
assume the
behind.
notes would be more extensive on Rand than on anybody else.
Hmm. But I would also think that if he wrote or sketched out scenes before his death, that he would have focused on what he thought would be the most important. And this seems like a big effing deal. This seems like I need to do a rough draft of this interaction, or at least outline or sketch it out somehow, because this is a big effing deal for both of these very important characters.
The sad thing is that actually plays against your liking of Sanderson's writing because this should have told you everything you needed to know to write Matt.
Mm-hmm.
When he's admittedly, okay, so we'll give him credit. He admitted he fumbled Matt in this
Mm-hmm.
book. But that's even a bigger admission when you have this. If this was written out for him, you should have known. You
Yeah.
should
Well,
this page right here should have told you everything you need to know to not write those last several chapters we bitched and moaned about.
yes and no, because it's partly unfair, but it's also partly true, the saying those who can't do teach. Because you can know how to do a thing but not be able to do it yourself. I mean, Bill Belichick is, considered one of the greatest coaches ever. You look at him and go, yeah, he didn't have much of a football career.
Well, he was a
Uh,
backup quarterback, I think, wasn't
he,
he?
I think he was a backup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had a decent, he had a decent level of athletic ability, but you know,
Well,
it
just,
it wasn't at
here,
the top.
here's one for you. I teach athletes how to move all the time. Do you see me on the football field playing cornerback? No.
Mhm. You don't like baseball, and a big chunk of your clients are baseball players. You don't even like the sport, let alone know how to do
That's
it.
the secret to my success. I don't mess with their skill work.
Exactly.
I just make them a human,
Ex
the maximum human being they can be.
Yeah. So I could see how Sanderson would get Matt, but then not know how to replicate how Jordan created this character.
Well, and I think no, he does do a lot of dialogue that we're annoyed with. I was gonna say maybe he's trying to get the grumbliness in his dialogue and in his inner dialogue.
Hmm.
But I think he's really just he just has no clue. I don't think he's that kind of person is the thing. I think
I
I think Sanderson does what Sanderson does because he wants to do it. Matt does what he does because it's right.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, like I said, my note for chapter 34 was so cringe,
Yeah.
because I think he's massively overcompensating, because he doesn't know how to do what Jordan did to create this character. So I don't think he fully gets Matt, but I think he gets him enough that he could have at least, and I feel bad saying it, but I partially blame Harriet, which is a dick thing to say because of what she was going through. But as the editor, I feel like she should have been the one to say, okay, this this isn't working. You need to adjust this. You need to change this. These Matt chapters aren't working. They aren't right.
Well, just as we postulated, Jordan's ability to write women might have come through Harriet. Harriet would be the wrong person to help him
Hmm.
write
Hmm.
Matt.
Yeah. Um, all right. So last thought on this chapter that I have. Um, oh, we kind of got sidetracked when I was trying to get us canceled. It's a shame because we'll get more into it with, like I said, in chapter 37, with Min looking at Rand, and what he's doing is, because while you don't yet realize it because you won't let yourself, you're falling in love with this guy. And if you change him, then that's not the person you fell in love with. So that's why it's a shame. You fell in love with the scoundrel. Sorry, honey, but that's what you did. And if you force him to become someone different, then, well, then are you still going to be in love with him? Because he's a different guy. And all right,
Let me pause this before I get us canceled.
All right, so how are you going to get us canceled?
You know, I don't know. What did you say right before?
I was talking about getting us canceled and Tawan not understanding why she
Oh,
felt
yeah,
like it would
yeah.
be a
Okay, okay,
shame
okay.
to change Matt.
Yeah, and this is so as people know from other episodes, I do a lot of studying in my psychology research of the we follow people that follow the dating scene. I follow the marriage scene and the rise in divorce and all the things that are going into it. Yeah, the whole mate swapping concept that females tend to have. Men like variety. Women just do it. There are positive manifestations of this, which is the girl that's in a happy marriage and remodels her house every 10 years. Or if we bring my wife into it, she's already wanting a different car, even though we've only had it for 3 or 4 years or something like that. And so me, I'm like, we should just pay off the one we have. But she's already wanting a different car. But then I think really hard about it. I'm like, she's not doing that with me. So if she needs a new car every 3 or 4 years to be happy, she's
Okay,
yeah, let's go with it. So the men that have the resources to have their wife remodel the house every 5 or 6 or 10 years, that's fine. Women are like that. They fix it even when it's not broke. And some of them do it with relationships. In fact, what we know from the data is 80% of women are the ones that file for divorce, but only 25% of men cheat. So, what is the deal here? Oh, it's the remodel.
that's interesting because the stereotype is the middle-aged guy who's trading her in for a younger model. But the data shows that that's
Well,
not.
even amongst men who cheat, they cheat expecting to stay married.
Hmm.
So, it's not trading in for the new model, it's going and playing with the new car, but coming back to the garage. Whereas women, when they do have infidelity, it's usually setting up a backup plan, which turns out to end up being the plan. So that's what's probably going to get us canceled there.
Mhm.
And Tuan, to your point is she's thinking you said he is the scoundrel you fell in love with.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is where it ties in. So sorry, I kind of tangented there, but I'm going to bring it back around here. The women who end up mate swapping are the ones who change their man. And then they want the man they were attracted to begin with, so they go look for
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
Um,
Next chapter.
well, no, last bit on this, and
Yeah.
it's not like she doesn't have the mind to figure this out though. So and the force of will, because I again I said there's a very quick setup and payoff here of she can't be the empress yet because, but then there's also there's also kind of a payoff here for, I would say, um I don't think she would think about it or see it in these terms, but she kind of assuages Nynaeve's fears and anger about this person being connected to Matt. And no, this is a great match for Matt because of how strong she is. And this is a real strong female character, which is uh when he starts to whatever it is that he's doing. And I like that it's from Tawan's point of view because we're still left wondering, is he somehow consciously warping the pattern? Is he using the power here for a quasi compulsion? What is going on here? But we do feel the effects of it through Tawan of like she's feeling both a physical effect and then also the mental of all she can think about is yes, All she can think about are the positives of why she must do this. And she's clawing for a reason to not to. And then she sees, much like Nynaeve, who's one of the few who notices this dark halo around Rand. She thought she saw something around him, um, a dark haze, a halo of blackness emanating from him. It warped the air like a great heat. Her throat constricted and words were forming. Yes, yes, I will do as you say. Yes, I must, I must. No, she said, the word barely a whisper, which is just awesome. And he tries to push. I need, he began. No, she repeated, confidence growing. You will bow before me, Randolph, or blah 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 blah. So she kind of gets that part wrong. Um,
Well, but
but
Rand went into this negotiation the exact wrong way. If you
mhm,
listen to people who talk about negotiating, you never use the word "I need." You just gave away every bit of negotiating ability
yeah,
by saying, "I need this."
but he's already said in the front of the chapter with from his point of view, he doesn't care anymore. All he cares about is the last battle.
Well, but
What happens after he stopped caring about?
this is where we flip away from the Machiavellian Rand that he was, from his point of view, Sanderson got right. But if he was truly trying to manipulate the discussion here, he would have never said, "I need." He would have said, "You will. This is best for you."
Yeah,
He would have used the pronouns of you, your people. Your people will benefit from this.
yeah,
In his head, he would have been saying, by going to their death.
hmm
But this horrible negotiating on his part. Now he's got the Tavaren thing, which is pulling at her. But it was a horrible negotiation from the beginning.
hmm Um, the thing that really jumps out at me though about this interaction is it isn't just that she sees the darkness. It's it goes even deeper than that, that she sees that others don't. She could not ally with this creature.
Mm-hmm.
That seething hatred, it
And
terrified her.
I like the word creature there because we talked about the lizard brain, the
hmm
psychopath.
But
You do become a creature at that point. You're no longer human.
think about how cold and quiet he has become. And that's all he is. He never loses his temper. He never loses that coldness throughout this negotiation, but she sees it. She sees that I don't care how much you're portraying equanimity on the outside, you're seething with hatred. So great moment on her part to elevate Tawan, but then also give us another clue, another insight into what Rand is becoming. And then that'll lead right into chapter 37. But first we get chapter 36, which Matt, more Matt, and then a little bit of Tawan at the end. Um, so I do like there are a couple things in here I like. For instance, right off the bat on page 551, I love that Matt is just sitting here looking and not even consciously studying his opponent, if you will. It's just what he does. And, I think I've used as an example before of talking about Matt as that cool opening scene in the movie Maverick, where he's just sitting and watching the table, and he's starting to pick up their cues and their tells. Um, and he does that with Varen, where he notices the she projected that familiar distracted air that was so common to sisters from the Brown Ajah. Because of the holes in his memory, Matt's first meeting with Varen was fuzzy to him. Blah 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 blah. But did seem to remember thinking she had the temperament of a scholar. This time, studying her, her mannerisms seemed too exaggerated to him, as if she were leaning on the preconceptions about Brown's using them, fooling people, like a street performer taking in country boys with a clever game of three-card shuffle. She eyed him. That smile on the corner of her lips, that was the smile of a jackleg who didn't care that you were on to her con. Now that you understood, you could both enjoy the game, and perhaps together you could dupe someone else. I love that is, where did that come from? Because you got it. There he is.
Hmm.
That is a great moment because that is nailing both Matt and Varen and using them to I think I've used this example before, but um Superman was my favorite character as a kid, my favorite comic book character. I was the oddball because you're supposed to like Batman because he's cooler. But I will say that I've always felt that Superman and Batman both are best when they're together because they are night and day. I can't remember who described it this way, but
Well, one's
Metropolis,
powered by the sun and the other is a bat. So, I mean,
yes, very literally, but I can't remember who described it this way, that Metropolis was New York City during the daytime and Gotham is New York at night, especially in the more crime riddled era where you don't want to go out at night. So it's the same city basically, but one is the bright happy sunshine and one is the scary nighttime. And and so they're both better when that contrast is there. Um and that's why that very brief little moment works so well because you have the absent-minded professor and the grumbling gambler, but they're still so very similar, and they're able to see each
no,
other
you
in
you
each
have
other.
the pretending to be the absent-minded
Hmm.
professor. There's a difference there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but then the damn bench. Would you shut up about the bench? And this jumped out at me because I think this is an example of Sanderson trying too hard and not getting it's not as, and I might not be griping about it so much had it not been for chapter 34 and the entire chapter being an annoying overreach. The entire chapter was like I said, it's a bad sequel where you go, oh, people loved this thing, so now it's Leslie Nielsen. Leslie Nielsen was hilarious because he was a dramatic actor. So when he was cast in Airplane, it he was the perfect straight man because he was a dramatic actor, and the genius of the guys who did that film were no, don't try and be funny, you deliver these lines dead serious, and that's why it worked. And you see that, but then he got typecast and he became that guy, so that subsequent movies were just dumb because it was, oh, you're the funny man now, but it didn't work because that's not who he was, that's not why he worked in the first place. And so every subsequent movie was just trying harder and harder and too hard to capture that moment without truly understanding why the moment worked. And that's what this stupid bench feels like to me, of I've got to have a funny, and so he keeps grumbling about the stupid bench. And it wouldn't have been a big deal. And I think if Jordan had written this himself, there would have been one comment about the stupid bench at the very beginning, and then he wouldn't have mentioned it again until the end of the chapter when Matt says, "Burn the damn bench. I'm tired of sitting on it."
Hmm.
But the constantly referring to it in his head while he's trying to have this conversation, it becomes a distraction. All right, no more flagellating deceased equines. Unless you have any other thoughts, I'm going to jump to the very end of the chapter.
Not a big thought. It's just that the whole conversation about being tugged and pulled went on way too long.
Oh, no, yes. How could I forget that? That went on too long. That should have been edited down. But page 555, I did find this interesting and was wondering what you thought about this. That when Varen says that Coincidence is how being Tavarin works, Farron said. You find a discarded object that is of great use to you, or happen to meet an individual at the right time. Random chance randomly works in your favor. Or haven't you noticed? She smiled. Care to throw some dice on it? The idea that fate is just coincidence working in your favor. Um, I wasn't sure how to feel about that definition of it, but also because,
Well, this is an awareness thing because if you live in a world that is fated, realistically, you would never notice.
but it's not just that. I feel like this is another way where Sanderson is demonstrating that while he's a good author, he's not the great author Jordan was, because go back when we have really delved into the fate and free will aspects of the Wheel of Time. And one of the points I made is the reason I feel like it works so well, and he's able to do the Tavarin mechanic without making it a Deus Ex Machina contrivance, is because there's a subtleness to it. There's always an element of, well, but you still do have choice. You still do have agency. So how much of it is fate? How much of it is predetermined versus how much of it is the individual? I think the reason this jumped out at to me is because it seemed a little too heavy-handed, and it seemed a little too much like Sanderson was putting you on a railroad track and saying, no, no, the pattern is a railroad track and we're going this way and you're coming with us. And there was more of a subtlety to it when Jordan did it.
Well, and again, fate is that wonderful term we've had many discussion about, but the part of the fate is this is your personality. Okay, so we'll stick with Matt. Your personality is super curious, even to the extent of harm. You come across an illuminator in a barn and save her life, and she gives you fireworks. And you're super curious about this, even though Tom is having a heart attack. And ultimately, you use it to blow a hole in the stone. Was that fate? Because your personality that was set from the beginning is what drove you in that direction to do all those things.
Mm-hmm. But then you still have the choice of action. You're still the one who ultimately pulled the trigger and did the thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But
So
you were fated to do that because you're the kind of person that would pull the trigger and do the thing. I should have put up determined if we were going to have this conversation.
yeah.
That's why I use the term autonomous will, not free will. It's still me, whether there were other
Mm-hmm.
forces inside me that caused it
Yeah.
to happen.
Well, and that's why I wonder how much of this has been swirling around in the back of your brain when you came up with that idea, because I think that's a lot of what Jordan was saying when he was writing the series, and that's why I say there's more subtlety there, because it's not just it's either total free choice, total free will, or total predestination, predetermination. And I think Jordan was able to walk that very fine line in ways that other authors I haven't seen anyway, uh, of kind of bridge that divide.
Well, that goes into the spoiler talk I want to have. So
Okay.
let's power through because
All right. So
we'll beat that horse as we get there.
last bit of coolness here on page 561. So here we go back to Tawan's point of view, and the main takeaway is supposed to be that the attack on the tower is happening now. The operation, she's giving it the go. The fists of heaven are taking off, and they're going to go do this raid on the tower. But to me, the bigger point is this exchange, this brief exchange she has with Seleucia. Um, um, and this is bridging chapter 35 with what we're about to see in chapter 37 here uh, of who Rand is and how dangerous he has become. Uh, we have changed everything, Fortuana said softly. General Gargan is wrong. This will not give the Dragon Reborn a worse bargaining position. It will turn him against us. And was he not against us before? Seleucia asked. No, Fortuana said. We were against him. And there is a difference? Yes, there is. I fear we shall soon see just how big a difference that is. So more again, pulling scenes do more than one thing, and even with Sanderson writing, as much as we grumble, he that is one of the things he is able to do, is that scenes do more than one thing. It's not just telling you about this thing that is happening, but also telling you who these people are, adding that depth to them. All right, chapter 37. The
My favorite emotion, frustration.
the fecal matter hits the rotating blades. Yeah.
No, and I think this is where again Sanderson. Some of these might have been pre-written because we talked about he's seething with rage and all these
Mm-hmm.
things. Where he's at is a point where he doesn't understand how much these things have control of him. That's different than being angry
Mm-hmm.
because again he's lizard brain. He is pure reactionary to those deep hidden emotions. He just can't his front brain is not acknowledging that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's different than I'm angry, I'm going to lash out, because that's still a conscious decision. There are these things that are seething within him and he's not recognizing them. So they're actually more in control of him than acknowledging them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if
And
you say I acted out in anger, then you could say, "Oh, well maybe I needed to take a step back."
mm-hmm.
Whereas he acting out in anger is not acknowledging that anger was there.
Yes. And this is why right at the beginning Min felt like screaming, you know, to your point, the frustration. And then she tries to talk to him. She's trying to get him to open up. She knows something is wrong, and you need to talk. We need to talk. But he doesn't see a problem. So no, why bother? No, it's just it is what it is. But it is what it is part of the problem. She just isn't quite sure how to get him there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she sees it. So whereas just on the next page, um,
Well, and this is
where
a
is it?
cross-sex mind reading thing too,
Mm-hmm.
because there is I saw a comedian describe this as there's like file cabinets in the head, and in a woman's head there's a file for everything, but in a guy's head there's a big file that says nothing. And it's just, what are you feeling right now? And the answer is actually nothing. You're making a turkey sandwich, and your wife walks in and says, "How are you today?" And your thought is turkey go on bread at the moment, right? That's what your thought is. Turkey go on bread, mayonnaise
Yeah.
is there. But in Rand's case, he's saying turkey goes on bread, but there's no turkey.
Hmm.
And he's frustrated that there's no turkey, but he's still
that
saying turkey go on bread.
that leads perfectly into this quote down here on the bottom of page 563. And this is what Min, she gets it because she gets him, kind of like I was saying about, maybe benefit of the doubt to Sanderson. He gets Matt. He just doesn't know how to write Matt. Min gets Rand, but she doesn't know how to. She doesn't know how to lead him to the point where she's at, where he also can see the problem. And she has this thought down here. Um, uh, he changed on that day as if something bright had turned off inside of him, a lamp flickering out, its oil gone, leaving only the casing. He looked at her differently now. When those eyes of his studied her, did they see only a liability? She shivered, trying to shove that thought from her mind. And this is, you know, because we've seen both of their points of view, this is why we keep we you keep bringing up the term cross-sex mind reading because he's thinking this and looking at her and wondering, are you thinking this? And she's doing the same thing, looking at him and thinking, are you thinking this? And that's why you actually have to talk to each other. But then talking can be dangerous because, this is, she's kind of demonstrating talking can be dangerous because when she asks a question, when she says something, there are all these underlying elements that went into that question or went into that statement. And the guy's going to hear it and he's going to have all these underlying assumptions because if he would have said that, it would have been because of this, which could be totally different.
Which is funny because I've been having thoughts on therapy, and people ask me about therapy all the time because I'm training to be one. Uh, and I have lots of thoughts on why the industry is so horrible right now because obviously mental illness is getting worse, not better. It might be beneficial to have two therapists, one male, one female,
Mm,
because as a guy, the male would understand you better. As a guy, the female can say, this might be the thing you're missing because you have boy brain.
mm-hmm.
And that marriage of thought might actually be the best guide. But you would have to acknowledge there's a difference between men and women, and that's not allowed these days.
um Next page, I think I may be reading too much into this, but that's what we do. So Rand makes this statement. I have to fix what problems I can, Rand said. Um, oh wait, where is it? Was this not did I miss something? Is it on the wrong page? Okay, anyways, where is it? Somewhere in here, he has this thought about, oh, there it is. I just had to keep going and I'm a dummy. Fix the problems you can. Don't fret over the ones you cannot. It was something Tam once told me. Um, so what immediately jumped out to me about that is there's thing called the Serenity Prayer. No one's
Mhm.
entirely sure where it came from. It's one of these things that's floats around on the internet in memes and it's quoted. It's attributed to who knows which saint or scholar, and it
Yeah,
who knows where it came from.
have the what the fortitude to
The
fix the things
the
I can and the wisdom to know what I
the
can't
the
fix. Yeah.
serenity to endure the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and he's missing the third key component, the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, so the official, God grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. There we go.
And that is what he has lost. By losing his humanity, he's losing wisdom. And he's not even thinking about it. He's becoming purely utilitarian in his outlook and in his actions. Um, which back to where we got off on a tangent earlier. I wonder how much of this is Elon the philosopher, the nihilist, bleeding over into Rand, because there's an element of uh fatalism there.
No, I don't think it is, though. I think this is actually him fighting that.
Mm. No, you know what? That's a good point because
Because that would be well, the last battle is going to happen. Let's see how it plays out mentality. He's trying to control too much.
because because what I'm about to do should frighten me is one of my notes here. This is a few pages down, but there's a good bit of setup before we get there. But that contributes to your thought of he's still fighting, he's still himself in there somewhere.
Well, you go back to
Um,
your serenity prayer. He cannot he he does not accept the things he cannot change.
mhm.
Whereas the nihilist just believes what's the point? I can't change it anyways. And he's the inverse of that.
So next page, page 565. I think there's a build up here from 565 to 569, which is where he has the line about because what I'm about to do should frighten me. Um, and Min is looking at him, and she has this thought of how she wished he'd just explode, not giggity. But again, this is where she gets him, but she doesn't know exactly how to phrase it and how to lead him away from where he's at. That she's actually wishing he would have an outburst of anger because that would be something. And and what she's saying here without knowing it, what she's intuiting here is I can't remember who it is. I know I've heard Peterson talk about this that some psychologist who is like the guy for relationship counseling and wrote the book on it basically, and it was indifference is what kills relationships, not anger. You think, oh, well, if this couple is angry at each other, if they're butting heads constantly, their relationship is on the rocks. Well, no, it's in trouble, but that's not what kills a relationship. What kills a relationship is indifference. And I think what Min is intuiting is that Rand is becoming indifferent to everything, and that's not a good thing.
Well, yeah, because the key word there is care.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't care about anything, then okay, say you've got a new toy and you don't care about it, it doesn't matter if it goes in the trash. If you've got a new girlfriend and you don't really care about her, it doesn't matter that she becomes the
Mm-hmm.
ex-girlfriend. It
And the
doesn't matter. So if it doesn't matter that she becomes the ex-girlfriend, well then any excuse will do.
mhm. Very next page, Min nodded, though Eredamon did get invaded by a shepherd from the Two Rivers. Once, that would have made him smile. She kept forgetting that he didn't do that anymore. So it's not just, it seems odd of why would you want your boyfriend to have an outburst of anger? Because it would be nice for him to show any emotion because he doesn't smile either. Not a good thing. And this is all building up. This is leading one for the other as it builds up to page 569 where he doesn't tell them what he's going to do, but I think one of the reasons it is such a gut punch when he does it is because he says what I'm about to do should frighten me. He said it doesn't. Min shivered. So and then all of this build, all this setup is to build up to the end of the chapter when her and Nynaeve go, we need help. And that's when they go to Cadsuin, and as much as Nynaeve doesn't want to, as much as Min doesn't want to, um, we need help because holy crap, what did he just do? Um, and it's not just what he did, it was his justification for it. Because he says before he nukes Grendel, he knows it should frighten him and it doesn't. And that causes Min to shiver. I mean, she has a physical reaction to something so emotionally dark. And then on page 573 to 574 is when he is justifying his actions. Um, I see a different answer to my problems, Rand said, voice still almost a whisper. Both times Kalendor failed me, I was being reckless with my emotion. I allowed temper to drive me. I can't kill in anger, men. I have to keep that anger inside. I must channel it as I channel the one power. Each death must be deliberate, intentional.
Like I said, psychopath.
I was just about to say he's talking like a psychopath.
But he's not acknowledging his anger. But just as I brought up Ed Kemper, I think the last time his targets were chosen by his anger for his mother. His targets are chosen by his anger of the chosen.
Outwardly, he's acting or trying to be a sociopath, but he's talking like a psychopath, which I
Well,
find
the
interesting.
jump between the two is basically who acts on it and who doesn't.
Hmm,
Realistically, they're kind of
good
the
point.
same root.
Min turned to Nynaeve. The Aes Sedai watched with wide eyes, mouth slightly open. She couldn't find words either. Min turned back to Rand. When he'd been close to killing her with his own hands, she hadn't feared him. But then she'd known that it wasn't Rand hurting her, but Simmerhaj. But this Rand, hand aflame, eye so intent yet so dispassionate, terrified her. That's that's again why that line, that why I wanted to point out that line about, when Rand looking down on her, those eyes so full of love as he was killing her. And again, the cross-sex mind reading. Y'all aren't telepaths. Talk,
Hmm.
because he's afraid that he's losing you because of, or he has lost you because of that, the action. He needs to understand he hasn't lost you, but you're afraid you've lost him because of who he's becoming inside. Um, that's why it matters that Min won't let Nynaeve go off. No, no, I'm gonna help. We're gonna do this together. Because she's the glue that keeps Rand from just shattering. Even when he's not around, she's still acting. She's still acting in that capacity. Um, because 578, this is Nynaeve talking, and says we need to go talk to Cadsuin. Um, I dislike the woman and I suspect she returns the emotion, but neither of us can handle Rand alone. She pursed her lips. I worry we won't be able to handle him together. Let's go. Men followed. Handle Rand? That was another problem. And even Cadsuin were both so concerned with handling that they failed to see that it might be best to help him instead. Nynaeve cared for Rand, but she saw him as a problem to be fixed rather than a man in need.
That's a female kind of female thought, and again, men being the tomboy, she kind of is the in between. I have a client that the extent of her stress is her stressing about everybody else. And she has kids, and one of her kids was doing a remodel with her husband. She's 30 years old, the kid. I say kid. Her kid's 30 years old with her husband, who's 30 years old. And they were doing a remodel, and she could not let them do it on their own. She's like, let me help you. Let me help you. Let me help you. And she was so frustrated that they wouldn't listen. And they kept doing things that she didn't advise them. It's like, look, I know you've done several remodels and you've gone through some of these things, but they're fucking adults. Let them make the mistakes because they won't learn from the things you
Mm-hmm.
did for them. They will learn when something doesn't go right and it makes them
Yeah.
mad and or frustrated or whatever. That's what's going to help them learn. Katsuin and Nynaeve are pushing their help in where he will never learn. Min gets that he needs to learn it, but just telling him isn't going to do it.
I don't know if this was purposeful or accidental, but I love the line about Nynaeve because I can way back at the beginning, your insight on Nynaeve that I haven't seen anywhere and I think is perfect is she's the most masculine female character. And you and again, you think, no, it's got to be one of these, you know, Amazonian warrior isses of the Aiel or Brigitte, who's the person of legend, or some of these big buff warrior. No, it's Nynaeve because she is mentally the most masculine, and that is a very masculine trait of she cares for Rand, but she sees Rand as a problem that needs to be fixed. And we've
Hmm.
talked about that before, but it's a trope now to understand that, okay, honey, is this a I need to rant, or is this a you want me to help fix this? Because I can listen if all you want me to do is listen. I can listen and commiserate, but my instinct is going to be, okay, here's what we need to do to fix this. And if that's not what you want, it's just going to tick you off. Anyway, that's all I had for that. So are we ready to move on to spoilers?
Yes. Quick bathroom break and then spoilers. This, well, and also comments too. We got to address the
Oh,
comments.
yeah.
Yeah. I got them up already if you don't want to read them.
All right, so spoiler time, go away for those of you who are reading through the first time and following along as we go
Well,
through this.
one of our first time
Um,
readers is reading faster than we can episodes. So I don't know where you
yeah.
are on our episodes, but
Well,
if you're here, welcome to the club.
yeah. Welcome. Let us know when you're done with your break, uh, from having too many new cultures to try and figure out.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe I should comment on that comment to see if they're still in the
yeah.
game, because we haven't gotten a comment since that one. But we got
Yeah.
Scott here. Isam did not actually enter the tower. You're correct. It was a deception to try to trap Perrin. That's probably the answer that makes the most sense there. Uh,
Hmm.
Lanfear was alive until Morden killed her, so her life could be recreated. He bargained with the Finn to have her.
Well, so okay, so you just said something interesting there that I think might lend credence to my idea that somehow Finland exists outside of the pattern, is some kind of alternate dimension. Not alternate in the way like the portal stones show you, but like outside of reality
Alternate
itself.
in the place that Rand met Morden last.
Yeah, because if all he had to do was um he could why did he need to bargain? He could have just killed her and had her reincarnated by the Dark One. I think he had to bargain to get her soul,
Hmm.
because I wonder if she died there, would her soul be able to return to the pattern?
No, because didn't they breathe in souls? Isn't that how they
They
feed?
they feed off of emotion. They draw
Hmm.
off of, but we'll see more when we get to Moraine and see what happened to her there. That there is something weird to it, that they might actually eat your soul. That they may be feeding on parts of it, and that if they suck you dry, you're like oblivion. So it may be that feeding on emotion is actually feeding on your soul in part.
Well, realistically, from a standpoint of neuroscience, that actually would make sense, kind of that analogy. Your soul is your emotional base that underlies all your conscious thought. Let's see. I'm not sure about warping, but Jordan has told us the land is one that and the dragon is one with the land. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, the Fisher King stuff there.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's this spoilery thing that's at the very beginning of the next book. The apples, um, is the contrast to what's going on now, is the light versus the darkness
Mhm.
of but see, that's why I wonder. I I'm wondering if we're going to get another scene sometime. I don't think we ever get that action from Rand's point of view, because I don't think Jordan wanted us to know exactly what was going on there. Of is And when I was talking about warping the pattern around him, um, I didn't necessarily mean consciously. Like he
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
exerting his
Well,
will.
I didn't get that from you anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and subconsciously he's warping it with darkness because that's what he's embraced.
Well, and so to the next comment, darkness is more than the lack of light. I prefer thinking of it in a spiritual way. Dark is chaos, light is order. Yes, let's talk about fusion. Fusion, where we get the light from the sun, is actually, this is why it's so hard. is creating order because fission is breaking a molecule, an atom apart,
Hmm.
and that causes a cascade of fission responses, which ultimately blows up like a nuclear bomb. So that's why we use uranium, because uranium is a superstructure. And if you break that up a little bit, it's still a superstructure. Whereas hydrogen bomb, hydrogen's as small as you can get. You break that up, things go boom. So fusion, on the other hand, is two hydrogens coming together to make a helium. So the simplest of atoms coming together to create the second simplest of atoms. And the little bit of energy that releases from that, from the sun, is why we're alive.
Hmm.
That's a little bit. That's a fraction, a percentage of a percentage of a percentage of a fraction of the energy released by the helium being formed. And we have everything, all the heat we can handle here in Texas from that. So, yes, light is actually the product of order, and chaos is the opposite of that, right? So it's the breaking up of it, which gets me to my point that I've been chomping at the bit to talk about. This is
So,
the last battle. Remember what I talked about, the cycle of life, just having to redo it and redo it and redo it makes sense?
mhm.
Moradin and Rand combining is the last battle because you've combined light and darkness
Hmm.
into one person, into an avatar of balance. Whereas the battle before was always light against dark, light against dark, light against dark. Lather, rinse, repeat. Ishii was right, but he was wrong about how he went about it. He should have been trying to combine with Rand the whole time.
Hmm. That's an interesting point. And there's an element there that kind of ties in with what Scott said, because the spiritual that kind of jumped out at me because right at the very beginning of Genesis is the first act of creation, let there be light, and people know that line, but I find it interesting that and then what? God separates the light from the dark. The idea that these both of these elements are necessary but must be separate. And he called the light day and the darkness night. I mean, basically the first act of creation is creating yin and yang. And to your point, that is kind of what's driving. I mean, you think about the symbol itself gives you it's a static symbol, but yet the way it's structured gives you a sense of motion, of yin and yang,
Mm-hmm.
driving each other. And that's the imagery that is used in this world, in this mythos, is that the power, the one power, side in and side are together, yin and yang, that's what drives the wheel that creates the weave. And so if you merge them, then there is nothing to drive the wheel. There is no yin and yang. There is no push and pull.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that would be the ultimate total entropy, total nothingness. Is that what you're saying? Kind of.
No, no, I'm saying Ishii wanted that.
Yes.
And that's exactly what his goal was. But combining the two together actually ends up becoming the seal. Remember, they had to break the seals to
Yes.
reseal. The combination of the light and dark in one person is the seal because you need some darkness. You Rand is right that he needs to do something about the Forsaken, and a lot of times that's killing them. You do we you learn self-defense hoping you never have to use it, but it's still there. You buy insurance hoping you never have to use it, but it's still there. That's what the final product of him merging, but he had to become the apple grower before he could be the counter to Ishii that merges.
Hmm.
Whereas now he's steel. He's 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 not something that's organic right now. Where Ishii still is. Ishii is organic.
he is embracing the darkness rather than, I was going to say controlling it, but that's not the right term. It's holding it in check. It's why Peterson's follow-up book was about chaos. The first one was order. Then he
Hmm.
realized, well, but you need a little chaos. You know that creative destruction is a term in economics that you're yeah, Rand recognizes I need to do all of these things, but he thinks I need to do all of these things and they're bad, so I must embrace the badness. No, you use the light to keep the darkness from overwhelming everything. And the darkness is there to keep the light from blinding everybody.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder if he decided to write that book after he kind of converted from the regular Big Five to Hexoko, because it flipped one thing, and it was because there's a sixth element from the Big Five. Everybody, if you're familiar with it, conscientiousness, agreeableness, openness, neuroticism, and extroversion. Hexaco added honesty,
Hmm.
and I think what he realized when they kind of made that switch, just like when they made the tetrad out of the triad, was there was an element missing, and that honesty actually flipped the people who were agreeable, but they weren't honest about it.
Hmm.
They were using agreeableness to control things.
Yeah. How we talked about how the nice guys finish last because they're not actually nice.
Yeah, they're trying to manipulate using niceness. It's the
Yeah.
bless your heart people. It's that kind of thing, and it separated that. And I think that's when he kind of it's about the same timing that he realized some people are control freaks. When it really looks like in the world when you deal with these people that they're going with the flow, but they're going with the flow in a way that makes the flow go their way. And where we are with this conversation is Rand is pushing the flow.
Hmm.
Ishii is trying to guide the flow, but he's doing it in a manipulative way. And so we need both of these people to come to the realization that both of these things matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eh,
Well, and we're not too far off from getting there, so that should be an interesting conversation to see how it actually plays out.
Which actually makes
Yeah.
Ishii part of the hero.
Well, he's
He's the bad guy. This is why Jordan is so good. And you've mentioned that he wrote the end before he ever wrote the books. Is I think he got that there is no good or bad guy here. When
well,
you
what
talk
is
about the chosen one trope
yeah.
that he's also chosen to destroy the world, it's the accepting of that part of you that is the key to all
The
of this.
the great line from the great actor Ian McKellen in Fellowship of the Ring, and Frodo says something to the effect of Bilbo should have killed him when he had the chance, and Gandalf says, I sense he still has a part to play. But also because, well, then Bilbo wouldn't have been the hero. Is this paraphrasing this? And this is kind of the subtext of, if Bilbo had done that, then he wouldn't have been the hero of the story. That's why he's the hero, is because he doesn't kill him, because he showed mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, I got nothing else, and the dog's getting barky, so I think it's the window guys are about ready to come in here anyway. So need to wrap this up. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, no, I was just chomping at the bit to get to to the balance and the
Hmm.
manifesting of what might be the true last battle. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great.
Well, I think that's yet another way that Jordan kind of turns the tropes on their head, is the last battle isn't what you think it is. The last battle for the world and for you, the reader, as you are leading up to it, is Matt's part of it. The battle, the huge weeks long battle that is happening on the battlefield, the physical fighting, the literal
The
battle.
horribly written battle, if I would
Well,
say
let's
so
set
myself.
that aside for the moment. But the true last battle is actually what's happening between Rand and Ishii.
Hmm. And they both have their ideas of how it should go.
Hmm.
And this is where I think we talked about the creator says, I can't do it myself. I have to do it through an avatar.
Hmm.
The Dark One doesn't realize that because it
Mm,
can't, but it does have its avatar
it's
in
a good
issue.
point.
So,
Yeah.
and the true power is the conduit that allows it all to happen. So realistically, what I'm trying to, I guess I didn't have the words to say it a second ago, but what I'm trying to say is at the end of the day, at this point, there is no Dark One and Creator.
Hmm.
There is just what is now. And he needed to do that by combining the two. The Dark One and the Creator combined, even though it says it's sealed. It's what is sealed is the idea that that isn't even a thing.
Hmm.
Now
Well,
it's just
I'm
humanity.
sure we'll have lots of interesting philosophical meanderings when we finally get to the end because there's a lot to ponder there. But before that, next Friday will be Egwene and the White Tower stuff. There's at least three, if not four, chapters of all of that playing out, which will have some good and some bad in the way Egwene's story arc finally comes to its climax. Giggity. Um,
All
and
right. And do we know what we're going to talk about on social next time?
I have no idea.
You
So
wanted to
we'll,
talk about VP candidates. Of course, we'll know RFKs by then because the 26th is when he has to declare to get on ballots.
yeah. So we may have some thoughts there because I had some thoughts, and yeah,
I
that
thought the
could be
thoughts would be
interesting.
more interesting before we knew, but we're going to know by the time we record again. Uh, what else did
Yeah.
I had a thought that I wanted to talk. Did I write it to myself? Maybe I wrote it to myself. Did I write it to you?
Mm.
What's the last thing I said to you?
Probably something about your butt and how much it hurts.
Oh, no, Pete Parada, the drummer that used to be the Offspring,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
talking about the difference between what he was saying with as being a drummer versus what we have now is everything mechanized. Everything is through these little beat machines, basically. You
Hmm.
very, we still have them, the actual artists, but what's thrown in our face is the beat machine with a mumble rapper or something along with it, and why it's different. Why it's different, and it goes right along. This would have been a great part of our conversation with Affable Gentleman the other day, because it's why art is different than the machine,
Mm.
which is why I'm not that scared about AI. I'm scared about some things with AI, but as far as becoming too human, this is the part that machines can never have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, that'll be an interesting topic of conversation. I got some, yeah, it could lead me to some dark places because I have some other thoughts, but we'll get there when we get there, and we will see y'all next time.
All right, later, guys.